movies. So when I have the chance to interview somebody who played such an important part in their creation, I'm just ecstatic. So our next guest occupies a unique place in the history of horror films. He's the writer, director of Halloween 3, the only film in the franchise not to feature Michael Myers. His career has been highlighted by his involvement in some of the most high-profile sequels in horror history. He was also the director of the classic miniseries based on Stephen King's It, which is still giving people nightmares all these years later. It's my pleasure to introduce the great Tommy Lee Wallace.
Yeah. Tommy Lee Wallace. There he is, right there. The man.
Tommy, great to have you with us today.
Pile on my crap here?
Yeah.
All right. So you all had a good day?
Yes, sir.
Have a microphone, please.
We hardly need one in here, do we?
Yeah, we almost don't, but sometimes. That should be fine. Yeah, I don't know if you heard my introduction about me being such a big Halloween fan, but I know I'm not alone in the world in that. But let's go back to the very beginning. You were a childhood friend with John Carter.
Yes, we grew up in the same town and in the same school, although John was 1 year older and therefore 1 grade higher. And of course, everybody knows with your children, that's a big gap. But we knew of each other, and we both were students of John took violin lessons, and I took piano lessons, so we crossed paths several different ways. These recitals, these fear-inducing recitals, little kids were raising up as music building. His father was deeply involved in the music department. So we got to have our recitals in the big college music hall. Horrendously intimidating, but it was because we were both musically inclined. It came in handy later on, having had performance experience when we started. We became friends over music and the Beatles, and started doing our own acoustic trio with his girlfriend. And then later on, we went electric and did a cover band for several years. There's a lot of gigs to be had in high school and college,
So
dances and parties.
you guys bonded over music rather than
Totally.
horror. So was horror in the mix at all? Did you guys read famous monsters of film?
No,
that stuff?
I loved horror movies the same way I love science fiction movies and Western movies and any kind of movie.
Okay.
I love movies, period. John was really obsessed with horror movies from an early age. He knew what he wanted to do by the time he was 9 years old. He wanted to be a film director. I didn't even know what a film director was. Didn't even know how you made movies. So in many ways, as we were teenagers, John was he was truly inspiring. He was such a ball of creative fire. He was making movies with his dad's 8mm camera. He was writing songs. He had written a novel, which I never read. And just involved creatively in every aspect of life, it seemed, which was inspiring to me. I was a creative person too, but not that kind of dynamic. Just he was writing a column for a professional wrestling magazine. You know, I mean, he was just so out there doing it. And that spun my head around. But the idea of horror movies themselves, that was kind of to the side. That didn't really completely coalesce until after he got same film school, USC. Cinema.
So did you guys collaborate actually when you were students there, or was he far enough ahead of you so that?
John was on his way out as I was on my way in. He was undergraduate in cinema, and I went to Ohio University and majored in design and art there. So I graduated, came out to USC as a graduate student, and was entering the program. We overlapped by about a year. So I was in on Dark Star, his original. It was a student film, and then it turned into something more than that. He and Dan O'Bannon sort of took the film and ran and turned it into a feature. And I got to help out a lot because I was an art guy. Dan needed somebody he could trust to build sets, do graphics and stuff. That's how I got him on that.
How much did you learn about, or how much did it affect your development as a director working on Death Star?
Dark Star, yeah.
Dark Star, I'm sorry, and Assault on Precinct 13.
Well, Dark Star, I was just peripherally involved as a pair of helping hands on several of the scenes. But on Assault, what started out as the Anderson Alamo and eventually became Assault on Precinct 13. I was in on the ground floor of that. I was the art director, building the sets. And then after the movie, I was accustomed, as were all student filmmakers at the time, to following the film all the way to the finish. You know, sound and all the rest. And it was kind of a jolt when we finished shooting Assault, and John's off in the cutting room somewhere, and it was like, wait. So I went to see him, and this was a very low budget movie, and John was editing his own footage, which, if you've ever been there, is a very lonely and difficult task. And I said, hey, give me something to do in here, you know. Basically the way it went. He said, can you cut sound effects? Sure, right? Learn as you don't earn, right? So I suddenly became a fixture in the cutting room, and eventually John trusted me enough to give me the action sequences in that movie, picture-wise. But cutting sound effects was a real adventure because we didn't do it the conventional way. We had to do it the poor kids' way. We had no money. So literally going out, we had enough money to rent a Negro, which is a professional tape recorder. And we would go out and record footsteps and then go in the cutting room and literally cut them, space them to match the footsteps on screen because we couldn't afford something like a Foley session, which is where you supply all those sound effects to a picture, you know, standing there in a gravel pit or whatever. So it was an education originating, like the sound of a snip of scissors when a silencer would go off and a bullet would hit somebody, learning what sounded like but wasn't really that sound effect. So great education. So by the time Halloween came along, John trusted me enough to cut pictures, so he asked me to be the production designer and the picture cutter on Halloween. And also did that again on the fall.
You wore so many hats in the movie Halloween. Literally, and masks. I can have masks like that. What were your main duties as the production designer? Because in my mind, I see that as being the person who design sets, staging, but
well, the challenges of Assault on Precinct 13 for a production designer were actually much greater than Halloween. On Assault, I had to build a major complex set with several rooms to represent the police station interior. Halloween was 100% location picture, so it was more adapting to locations, building partials like the closet scene, where we're in an actual residence, but we're not going to tear up their outside and had not come up through the unions or anything. I didn't actually know what the parameters of a production design job were. And because we had so little money, I wound up, without realizing what I was doing, being the location manager, finding all the locations. Anything, I took it to be anything that's on screen visually and not sound falls into the purview of the production designer. So I'm procuring cars, all of this.
You know, the most remarkable thing for me is that I have watched that film, I don't know, 10 times. And I always thought it was shot in Illinois at Halloween time.
Well,
I mean, I just got from the opening shot, I always got the impression that it was Halloween, that it was fall. Even the leaves falling, which I understand was an adventure in itself.
Southern California in the springtime does not set up for
No.
Well, and if you grew up in that part of the country as I did, Kentucky, and the Midwest in general, Halloween, it looks like, generally, there are like colors and leaves. You can picture, if you had the time and the money, a much different looking setting. What we decided on, and it was obviously a sound decision, but also the only one that made rational sense, was, okay, there's golden autumn with all kinds of leaves on the trees that flow through the air, just frozen. Or there's brooding dark autumn, gray autumn with overhanging trees, which is the best we could do in Southern California. We found that look in South Pasadena. And a lot of the technique was steering around palm trees, finding a way not to see the palm trees. But thank you for that compliment. We tried very hard. Even having autumn leaves to work with was a big deal because springtime in California, right? And I went down to, they have in Los Angeles especially, they have a sort of flower district downtown, and there are these big shops, a bit like Michael's decorator shops that have like pussy willows and dry leaves for decorative purposes. And I bought as many of those dry brown leaves as we could afford and broke them off one by one and put them in garbage